and this team has stood up to do it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership.
Thank you.
$1 billion. That's how much money has been stolen from the hardworking taxpayers in my home state of Minnesota. And if that's not egregious enough, some of these taxpayer dollars have allegedly been diverted to al-Shabaab terrorists. Under the failed leadership of Tim Walz, Minnesota has become a hotbed for fraud. We knew it was bad, but now, thanks to the work of our new U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, the true size and scope of the crimes is being brought to light, finally. $250 million in the feeding our children scandal. The largest pandemic fraud case, by the way, in the country. 14 million robbed by a woman who fraudulently diagnosed Somali children with autism, then billed the taxpayer for the services that were never provided. Over 5 million stolen by individuals falsely claiming to provide housing assistance to those in need. These are just some of the fraud schemes that have been federally charged, and I want to emphasize that because our failed governor tried to claim that he's been prosecuting. He hasn't even investigated. There are even more, by the way, that are under investigation, including 80 autism clinics that are currently under investigation. Career fraud prosecutor and former acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Joe Thompson, said the amount of fraud, quote, takes my breath away. Even the New York Times admitted that the fraud in Minnesota is, quote, staggering in its scale and its brazenness. Between the meals, housing, and autism therapy fraud cases, 86 people have been charged. Of those 86, 78 are of Somali descent. Let me be clear, it is not racist to call out criminal behavior. And we're going to not cower to baseless labels while Minnesotans, including law-abiding Somali Americans, get robbed blind. While Tim Walz refuses to take accountability for the fraud he created and enabled, President Trump is committed to justice for the crimes against the taxpayers of Minnesota, and I am too. I want to thank Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent for launching an investigation into this important issue. Minnesotans deserve answers and accountability, and we're not going to rest until they get both. And thank God for President Trump raising this because no one was covering it. We've been sounding the alarm on this fraud for over 3 years. No one in this room and no one back at home was reporting how bad this is. Finally, because of our president raising the issue, people are talking about it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention before I left what our conference chair talked about when we started. My wife Jackie and I are praying for the family of Sarah Bergstrom as they grieve this infuriating and unfathomable loss. We're also praying for Andrew Wolf as he continues to fight for his life. These two guardsmen are heroes who answered the call to keep this city safe. Justice must be executed swiftly for this heinous and targeted act. And with that, I yield to the leader.
Thank you, Whip. Our country was shocked the day before Thanksgiving to see just a senseless, violent act of this tragedy attack on our National Guardsmen here in D.C., the West Virginia National Guardsmen that were both attacked for just doing their jobs and keeping D.C. safe. I, too, want to extend my prayers and sympathy to Sarah Bergstrom's family for the horrible loss of her life and just senseless loss of life for such a young girl with great promise. And then, of course, Andrew Wolf, who is still at the hospital fighting for his life from the gunshot wounds that he suffered. And we keep him in our prayers, his family as well, and pray that he is able to recover and come back. And I know the people of West Virginia share that. The people of America share those prayers. This week we have a number of bills we're bringing to the floor to continue to address some of the problems that were created by the Biden administration that drove up inflation, that drove up higher costs. We saw so many ridiculous rules and regulations that added cost to the products we buy, our small businesses that were under attack. And so this week we're bringing a number of bills to reduce those regulatory attacks on small businesses. Giving small businesses relief also gives families relief in terms of lower costs. We're going to bring more bills that came out of the Education Committee to take on what is happening in our universities and our schools, where the Chinese Communist Party tries to move Confucius Institutes into our schools, teaching our children, trying to put communist ideas into our children in our schools. And so we're going to continue to have more transparency and prohibit that kind of money coming in from China to our schools. We're bringing the SCORE Act to give some structure. Over the years, you've seen lawsuits erode the ability for the NCAA to even police college athletics, to the point where now it's the wild, wild west. There are no rules in place, no structure. You have people that can play until they're 26 years old in college athletics. You don't have any protections for a lot of the student athletes. And so we first restore the ability for policing through the NCAA. Congress won't be doing the regulations. It will be the NCAA having the ability to police college athletics again. We also protect women's sports. We protect Olympic sports by ensuring that you have an equal number of women's sports to men's sports, that you have a minimum number of sports, so that a lot of the Olympic sports that are so important to our country, as we see the Olympics coming up here again. In many cases, our Olympians come from the college ranks, and so we protect that too. And again, just putting structure in place for what is right now wild, wild west atmosphere. And we're going to continue to work on health care proposals to ensure that families have choices and lower premiums. That's what Republicans care about. Democrats have never cared about that since they passed the Affordable Care Act and all the broken promises and lies that went with it. If you like what you have, you can keep it. Probably the most broken promise in all of politics, where millions of families lost the good health care plans that they liked because of the Affordable Care Act. And of course, there's nothing affordable about the Affordable Care Act. All we've seen is increased cost, 80% premium increases. Democrats just concerned about bailing out insurance companies who get record profits, while families see higher premiums because of that failed law. What we want to do is give families options, lower premiums for families. And again, we've brought some bills to the floor already. We're going to keep bringing bills to the floor to do those two things, to lower premiums for families and give them options so that they can get what's best for their families. They don't have to be enforced into a plan that the government tells them they have to be in, that's too expensive for them and doesn't work for their family. They can buy whatever they want that makes sense for them and for their family. So we're going to continue to work on that too as we move an aggressive agenda, and that agenda is led by our Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.